calling the City Council meeting for July 16th, 2019 to order. Will everyone please rise for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, would you start with the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Dorsey,
Here.
Councilmember Inesco,
Here.
Councilmember Kranz,
Present.
Mayor Rogers,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Peterson,
Here.
Councilmember McDowell,
Present.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Do we have any changes to our agenda this evening? City Manager?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would like to mention I had the communication strategy project update scheduled for the city manager's report at the end of the meeting. I would like to move that up to just after the city investment strategy presentation. Our consultant is here with us this evening and don't feel that she needs to sit here throughout the entire meeting.
Okay. Anyone have an issue with that?
No.
Hearing no objections, we change the agenda. Thanks, Jeff. Anything else on the agenda tonight from the council? Okay, we'll move forward to council reports. Councilmember Dorsey.
All right. Well, I just came from my Mason Transit Authority Board meeting. But yesterday, I attended the Love Inc. golf tournament, and that was kind of fun. You may have heard there was a hole-in-one out there, but that was not me. So, I am looking forward to attending the city cleanup day coming up, community cleanup, right? There's one on Friday and one on Saturday at the Oakland Bay Junior High. So I'll be up there. We got the C Street landfill tour coming up on August 2nd. And a ribbon cutting for the new Connector Street project coming up on August 2nd also, I believe. And this Friday, I'll be downtown at the Bite of Shelton Expo. And I'll be at the city booth and a private booth as well. And that's about it for me. Aside from my normal briefings with Jeff.
Councilmember Nisco.
Well, mine is easy. Besides my briefing with Jeff on Friday, I just got back from mini vacation, so I did nothing last week besides sit in the sun.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Kranz.
Yes, just normal staff briefings, and I did attend the Love Inc. Golf Tournament fundraiser yesterday. I had a Criminal Justice Board meeting tomorrow that did get canceled, so I will not be there because it's been canceled. It looks like, yeah, on August 2nd, we got some events coming up as Councilmember Dorsey just stated, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Including the things that were mentioned as far as staff meetings and events, I will be meeting with the state auditors next week to discuss risk issues with the city. That's pretty standard. And I will also be at the Bite of Shelton, I think, rotating between several booths. I'm not sure where I'll be, but you can come find me. So, Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Last week, the Mason County Opiate Stakeholders meeting was held on Wednesday. My next Peninsula Regional Transportation Project Organization meeting is not until August. And in addition to the meetings that have already been discussed, beginning in August, we will have our Executive Budget Committee meeting to review the reports and work on next year's budget.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald.
I started my week out with my Lions Club meeting. Meet and greet was Tuesday night, and that went well. Thursday, I attended the tiny homes discussion group that there's going to be twice a month. We'll be attending, kind of hopping in and out of the city cleanup projects. Candidates in the Park was Friday, and I did go to the Love Inc., but I didn't play golf. I watched the golf balls. That's worth just going out and watching. That's pretty cool. We'll be involved in the Bite of Shelton at 2 different booths on Friday, so that's my week.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Schmidt?
Good evening. Last week attended the MACECOM Governance and Legislative Board meeting on the 9th and attended the EDC Board meeting on the 11th and one constituent meeting on Friday. I'm looking forward to all the wonderful meetings coming up in the first week of August. So,
As we all are.
yeah, of course.
Now's the time we'll have a period for general public comment. Is there anyone that signed up tonight, Tana?
I do not have any cards at all.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
I move to approve the consent agenda as published.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is accepted as published. We'll start off with our presentations from our finance director, Aaron B. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, council members. Aaron B. Miller with the city's Finance Department. And we've got a presentation for you. While we're waiting, just a couple of quick updates I'd like to give. The first one, and the mayor mentioned it a little bit ago, SAO, the State Auditor's Office, will be on site beginning Wednesday, the 24th, for their annual audit of our 2018 activity. Usually takes a couple of months here or there, but they'll be on site then. And also want to update on our general ledger cleanup project that we have going. I think the council's aware that we are cleaning up some of our general ledger. It's going very well. We've identified a whole bunch of issues that need to be cleaned up, and now we're in the process of deciding what's the best way to clean that up and move forward. But all in all, it's going very well. Great. Thank you. So today we have our presentation on our investment strategy. Our current investment strategy is governed by Shelton Municipal Code 2.12.020, which basically states that under the duties of the Financial Services Director, things and other financial services relating to all city departments may be necessary from time to time. So not a whole lot of meat on that bone. We are going to be bringing a updated large-scale current investment strategy. It's going to go from about 10 words to 17 pages. So that's on the come here, so that we can really lock that down. What we want to do is we want to start becoming more diverse in our investments. Right now, we have most all of our money in the local government investment pool. It's a great pool, and we're going to always be using that pool. But we would do well to diversify into other investments. So we mentioned we do have an updated investment ordinance. What we'll suggest is that ordinance be then adopted into code, into Shelton Municipal Code under the Finance Department as rules of the road for ongoing investments. We will also run it by an organization called WPTA, which stands for Washington Public Treasurers Association. And they have a process where they'll go through, review it, and give a stamp of approval, assuming that it meets the state requirements. And let me just let you know, I'm going to take the first half of this report, which is the boring half, and then Terry's going to jump up and give you all the fancy graphs and good comments. So our investment objectives are the same for all governments. There's 3 of them, and they are in order: safety of principal, liquidity, and then yield. And they are in that order. So safety of principal will always be the foremost objective of the city's investment strategy. There are really 2 safety risks that we want to make sure that we avoid. One is a credit risk, and this is a risk due to loss of the financial failure of one of our securities. Unbelievably rare. I mean, it just really won't happen because in government, we can't speculate. We can't say, oh, have you heard about this ABC company? They're really doing something, let's invest in them. It's a small window of what we can invest in, and in that small window, we can only invest in the safest of those securities. So there is a risk out there, but this is a very small one. The bigger risk of the two is the interest rate risk, which is the risk that market value of securities in our portfolio, the market values will continue to increase, and then the value of our portfolio will decrease because they will be locked in at a particular rate, as in a rising rate environment, will still be at that same rate while shorter term investments may be earning more. We'll get to why diversification still works. But in order to minimize that risk, we would look for a structured investment portfolio, or what we call a ladder, so that we constantly have investments coming off that we can reinvest, and as they reinvest, if rates have increased, they get invested at that higher rate as well. And we'll limit our long-term investments to a maximum of 5 years per investment, and with a average yield to maturity of 3 years. The other two components of the investment objectives, again, as we talked about liquidity, this is to make sure the city investment portfolio remains sufficiently liquid and to enable us to meet all reasonably anticipated operating requirements. So we'll do this a couple ways. One of that is we'll maintain a lot of money in the LGIP, Local Government Investment Pool, which is a short-term investment. Those investments roll over all the time. And then we'll also make sure that we try to structure our investments so we'll know when cash is going to be needed. Investments will roll off the books, or roll off the investments and be able to be used. The third objective is yield, and that's the least important objective, but still, we want to at least get a market rate of return on our investments, and that's what we'll be looking for. A couple of other just quick cleanup things. Standards of care, we will of course use the prudent person rule. We will of course invest, we recognize that the investments are public funds, and we will invest the portfolio with the professionalism that is required for public funds. And the finance director or their designee will act as the investment officer, and no person may make an investment without the express written consent of the investment officer. Last slide I have, before I think I'm going to pass out up here, it's hot. The authorized investments by the state. Again, we cannot speculate. So these are the types of investments we can invest in. And I want to just draw your attention to, in the parentheses, you'll see a percentage and then you'll see a duration. So looking at the LGIP, the state rules allow us to invest 100% of our dollars into the LGIP. Makes sense. There is no duration. That's a short-term investment, so there isn't a length of time really concerned there. As you go down here, the U.S. Treasury, we can invest 100% there, and we can also invest 100% in GSE, which is government secured enterprises and agencies. And then you start getting into these other investments. Because we have the option to do that does not mean we will do that. It has to make sense. And with our city, we are going to spend probably most, if not all, of our time investing either in the LGIP, the Treasury, or the agency funds. Just because though we don't have someone who can look at the investments every single day, make trade decisions, and move forward, and in order to have a firm help us with that, it costs a bit of money, and the return on that investment just isn't there right then. So with that, I'll turn it over to Terry, and this one.
So this slide shows the city cash and investments at the end of June. So if you see to the far left, the gold column is our checking account, which is at almost 4.9% or 4.9 million. And then next to that, we have our LGIP in the blue column, which is 9.8 million. And then our long-term investments in the red at 1.3. And then the green column is the combination of all the accounts at 16 million, just over 16 million. And then to the far right is our pie graph, which shows the percentage of those monies. And so the best practice would be for a more diversified portfolio, and our long-term goal would to be have a more blended and more diversified portfolio where we would expect to have at least a third of the pie in each of those categories. So that's our long-term goal. So the city long-term investments would be our bonds. And the first one we have is our Freddie Mac at the top of the chart there. It's at a $300,000 investment. This is a non-callable investment or bond, and it will mature in April of 2020. And then we have the two, our newest ones, which is our Federal Farm Credit 1 and Federal Farm Credit 2. They're both at $500,000 investments. But you'll see the difference that these are callable bonds. So the maturity date would be, for the example, the first Federal Farm 1 would be June of 2024. But our expectation, the way the rates are going, we expect that to be called in April of 2020. So the bottom graph shows the gold is when we expect our long-term investments to mature or be called. So the first gold column would be the Freddie Mac and Farm Federal 1. So, and then the blue columns are if they were to be matured at their maturity date. So, for example, as rates fall, the Federal Farm Credit Bank, much like your home mortgage, can refund their debt at a lower rate, so principal balance would stay the same, but the interest rates would change. So Bond 1 and Bond 2 would be our recent bond purchases. They're both Federal Farm Credit Bank bonds, and they're both the government-sponsored enterprise agency funds, as Aaron explained just a minute ago. And they're both for $500,000 investments. But here's where the changes for both of them. The year to maturity percentages are different. The Bond 1 is at 2.3 and Bond 2 is at 2.1. And that's because on Bond 1, our maturity, we take a more risk because it's a longer-term bond that if it's out to maturity in 2024. That's the difference there. And they're most likely going to be called earlier than the maturity date. So these bonds were chosen because they're very safe investments and because of their likely call dates. The organization of Federal Farm Credit Bond is highly rated for their credit worthiness. Rating agencies such as Standard & Poor and Moody's. And these are good stepping stones to begin our investment strategy. So this is the Treasury yield curve. So this is for May, June, and July of 2019. So if I can bring your attention to at the bottom of that slide for the 3-month and the 10-year. So if you look at June of 2019 and July of 2019 for the 3-month versus the 10 years, it's an inverted graph line. So what this typically means is this curve can be, and I repeat, can be an indicator of an economic slowdown, but we just don't know. So this will be the federal funds rate future probabilities table. So if you look far to the right, to the 2.25 and the 2.5, that's where we currently sit with our interest rates. But if you look far to the left-hand side to the meeting dates, that's the federal meeting dates, and the next column of the cut probability. So when they meet in July 31st, 100% believe that there will be a cut, at least a 25 or a 0.25% cut to the rate. At their next meeting in September, 78% believe there will be another cut. And then in October, 40%, and December, a little bit higher, 60%. So we could see possibly 3 more cuts in the next, within, or by December 31st. So to give you an idea of what our diversification should look like, our LGIP currently is earning roughly 2.46% in June. Our newest investments are earning 2.3 and 2.1 if they're held to maturity, or 2.07 and 1.96 if they're called early. So why do we diversify? Each federal cut is typically 0.25% or 0.25% to a short-term interest rate. The LGIP, by policy, is a short-term investment. If the Fed cuts rates 3 times as predicted in the earlier slide, the LGIP would fall roughly to 1.7% of the earnings, while we're locked into the earnings on the long-term investments at a higher rate. The city will always invest in the LGIP, but can reduce the risk by diversifying our portfolio. And the GFOA, which is Government Finance Officers Association Best Practices, states that diversification in a portfolio is an important strategy for managing risk. So these investments are not losing money. It's just a difference in interest earnings. But we want a way to minimize that risk and have a more diversified portfolio. And that's it. Any questions?
So we have these numbers here. We've invested 300,000 Freddie Mac, federal 500,000, federal 500,000. Can you give us a number what the return on that is at the end of the time?
Well, there'll be 2 parts. So
I don't have
for
my calculator.
for like the Freddie Mac, it's 2.5% on the 300,000, so it's $7,500 a year on that. So,
Right.
and then the 500 would be slightly more, a little bit. Depends on what when the call date will be too. So those will be called as what we're predicting earlier
Okay.
than what the maturity date will be.
Thank you.
Got a few questions.
Why don't you take one? huh?
Take one, okay.
Unless they're related,
Can-
Joe.
Can you just define for us, a little bit of confusion on my part, maturity and what the maturity and callable, non-callable timeframes are, because I always kind of interchange to those two. So, and then what the strategy is behind calling the funds early. I assume it's with the risk of economic downturn.
So
You
if,
didn't-
just like your mortgage.
Right.
You know, your own mortgage, if the feds cut the rate, so the interest rates will be lower, so you want to have to pay lower interest rates on your home loan, correct?
Mhm.
So you would want to refinance or whatever. So this is essentially the same thing that they're calling those bonds earlier because then they can buy at a lower rate, more bonds at a lower rate. But which means that we'll be selling at a lower rate. Am I, what?
Well, no, they would have,
You moved.
they would pay off what they owe us on the bond, and then if we choose, and they go out and offer it on the secondary market again, we could choose to repurchase it, but it would be at that lower rate. But we are absolutely guaranteed the 2.3 or the 2.027 if they call it on the call date. Does that answer both of your questions?
It clarified the call versus
Okay.
maturity when you answered that question for me, so thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, go ahead, Councilmember.
restricting, trying to get an understanding of restricting cash, and what's sort of the percentage breakdown right now of cash that we're restricting for in the investment purposes versus just cash on hand in the bank? What do we try to keep a cushion at in the city typically?
So if we go back, well, it would be slide 7. I'm too small for me. Oh, slide 8. Both of ours
Sorry.
together. Slide 8. So you can see that the LGIP on slide 8 is about 61%. That's very liquid. That's as good as cash. It's a short-term investment. And then the orange portion of the bank account is also liquid. That's money in the bank. So we only have about 8% invested in long-term investments, and therefore we'd like to get that more diversified in that.
What ultimate, I guess my question was, what ultimate percentage are we kind of hunting towards for the long-term investment overall?
Gotcha. As a start, we'd like to get to about 33, 33, and 33.
Okay.
That's where we'd
the
like to go as a
thirds.
start.
I gotcha.
Depending on who you ask, the long-term investments really could be upwards of 50, 60%. But we want to get to 33% and then just kind of continue to grow from there.
Any question? Anybody else? I've got to get my mindset around a 5-year term as being a long-term investment. That seems like a short-term investment to me, but, Aaron, you said the target eventually you had, I think, 5-year max and an weighted average of a 3-year maturity.
Right.
Do you know what the current LGIP weighted average maturity is? It sounds like it's months or.
Yeah, by policy, the LGIP can invest in certain things too, but a long-term investment for the LGIP is 200 days. So it is immediate, and those funds that we have in there are always available to us on the next day. So if we need it on a Friday, on Thursday by 10 o'clock, I think it is, we say this is how much we need, and it's in our bank account the next morning. So from our point of view, it's absolutely liquid.
Councilmember Smith. Any other questions? Councilmember Smith.
Taxes. Does the city pay tax on any interest that's gained from any of these? And if so, how is that budgeted?
No.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Easy enough?
Simple answer was no. Okay. The pie, it looks, I don't know when this was made up, back some commission years ago, maybe? I don't know.
The current pie,
Yeah, the current pie.
that one? This is as of end of June of 2019.
Okay.
So this
So,
is,
but you want to diversify and use, and get 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, more like the size of the bank account on that.
that's right, that's right. The brick red area is our long-term investments, and we want to make that bigger and at the same time then shrinking the LGIP.
Right. And the long term, are they a little more risky, or?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes. They are, because you are investing funds in long-term investments and you're tying those dollars up. So the answer is yes, but at the same time, it's kind of not really, because what we do is when we invest in the federal farm credit, for instance, the two that we just invested in, they are active on the secondary market. So if we had to, we could sell those and get our money, and they would get back on the secondary market. We wouldn't lose principal, but we would lose interest at that point. Okay. So there is some risk in that, but it's minimal, and it's minimized by state law.
And I'm assuming that you'll be keeping track of that? You'll be,
Of the investments?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Sorry.
A question on risk, because that's, to me, risk in most investments are always, do you get your principal back, let alone interest? So most investments we're talking about, the principal
It's, yeah.
is safe,
That's
safe
right.
in quotes.
That's
but,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are essentially, when we sell bonds to do a project, we say we're going to sell $5 million worth of bonds at 2% interest. So, the bank gives us the $5 million, and then individuals, corporations, other people buy our bonds because they know at the end of the term, they're going to get 2% annually on that investment. And so then when we make payments to the bank, just like your mortgage, you make your principal payment plus an interest amount. That interest gets dispersed to the bondholders, and that's how they earn money on that. So the principal is almost as safe as you can get it on these.
Good.
Just a comment at this point. Slide 11, I'll be honest, this isn't the first time I've seen economic downturn potential in the next, 2 to 5 years. I think this is a fantastic thing to be talking about right now and getting ourselves prepared for those rainy day, or excuse me, not non-rainy days when we're struggling economically in the state and otherwise, just to be prepared for that. And I think this is a good step, and I think you guys did a great job putting this together. Thank you very much.
I have one final question. The state obviously at some point decided to create the LGIP, correct? And that's really for short term. They do not have anything for, again, what I consider not even short term, but 3 to 5 year.
No.
It's up to the individual agencies, cities, counties.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And the LGIP would like to add length to some of their investments, and I know they've been working on that, but the whole idea behind the LGIP is for local governments and other state agencies to be able to invest their monies and do a little bit better than they can in the bank, while at the same time having that liquidity, knowing they can always get that money back out. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
Great.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Okay, next presentation will be the city manager and communication plan update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we have been working on a communication strategy to more effectively communicate with our citizens and with interested parties. And I appreciate you allowing me to share a brief update about the communication strategy project. You all remember Kate Elliott with Mull Foster Alongi, and she has joined us here tonight in case you have any questions that I can't answer. And wait for that to get up on this. There we go. So our city communications strategy, the project scope, we wanted to review and evaluate our existing communications tools and practices, including comparing our communications tools and practices with other local jurisdictions and best practices in the space. Assess compliance with the Public Records Act and the Open Public Meetings Act, the Washington State Records Retention Requirements, as well as the ADA. And we wanted to assess our organizational capacity and ensure coordination for maintaining and enhancing our communications efforts. And finally, we wanted to develop a written report that includes observations on our current communications efforts, recommendations for improvements where we can do better, including possible changes related to current practices, organizational structure, mediums currently in use, and new mediums to enhance overall communications with the public while achieving compliance with the applicable regulations. We wanted to have the estimated costs and the resource requirements to be able to do what we were talking about, and to evaluate our existing tools and practices in light of the common and expected communications practices. So a timeline, we kicked off our project in March. Kate conducted the interviews in April as planned. Currently, Kate is working on the assessment of our communications in comparison with other similar jurisdictions, as well as ensuring we are compliant with all the rules and regulations. We also built in some of the budget for community engagement, and we have developed a short community survey to gather information about how folks like to receive information from the city and how much they want to be informed about city happenings. The survey is online now. I think everybody's seen the version of that. I took it myself, and I think we've had pretty good engagement since that's been out. We should have pretty good, reliable results once that survey is concluded. Lastly, following this assessment phase, Kate will develop a final report with recommendations, and we will be back in August to share those highlights with you. So in the interviews, we heard a ton of great feedback during the interviews, a lot of good takeaways. Kate was very impressed with the candid responses she received. So we had, did all those one-on-ones so we could get the best information. We heard a lot of good praise for the work that we've already been doing, and we want to make sure to convey the good feedback we heard. So a couple of key points. Several interviews, both from the staff and the council, said that they appreciate the level of communication the city staff are already providing, and that looking back, the communication we're providing is now leaps and bounds ahead of where we were just a few years ago. Several folks said that the electronic signs on the roadways are extremely helpful at conveying information on street impacts and are well worth the dollars spent. And several folks also mentioned that Andy does a great job ensuring that our external communications to the public are engaging and visually attractive. And a lot of what we heard is we want more of that. Is exactly what we wanted to hear, and great news. From the feedback, we've identified a few early priority areas that our final report will focus on, and will help Kate make sure that we have the tools in place to make some headway on some of these items where we could improve. Clarifying roles and responsibilities, making sure everybody within the organization understands Andy's role, what he does and doesn't do, and then we can work on filling in the gaps where we need. Developing and implementing a general communications plan so we can wrap our arms around everything that we do and be able to convey how that serves our primary interests and goals. Developing the communications plan by gathering inputs from the city departments, which we've done. And then once we have a draft, share it back out so we can have buy-in from both the council and city staff about how we can make use of this effective tool, or make this tool the most effective it can be. We want to identify our goals and key messages, key audiences, and the best tools to reach each audience, which is a huge part of this strategy. And then get the communications house in order. Kate is helping us create a standard operating procedure, identify updates for our website, and create a website maintenance schedule, and create a communications plans for events and notifications. And Kate will help us build those tools. And identify training opportunities for spokespeople. We also heard a lot of good feedback about how we communicate, how we use press releases and social media, and make sure we tie that information back into the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish. And lastly, and one of the most important things, is bringing everybody in the organization along, keeping them informed about what we're doing, so that when somebody's at the grocery store and they ask a question, people at least have an idea of the direction we're going and how to answer that, and how to point them to the people, give them contact information for the people that can best answer the question with the most up-to-date information. And lastly, we'll be back next month with our final report, and I'd be happy to take any questions and introduce Kate Elliott there in the back, and she can come up if you have any questions for her.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Could
Les? Go ahead.
Could we at least introduce her so we can see who she is?
Sure.
Is she there? Okay, just not.
There's Kate.
Because we heard the name, and so anyway, well, welcome to Shelton. Well, one thing that's just kind of interesting, when you're talking about the survey, you know, it kind of shocked me, because I filled it out and looked at it, and it kind of surprised me in a way, but I instantly jumped on Facebook, because we've been doing either more of it or whatever, but I know that anything that's going on in the city, I'm gonna catch it on my Facebook before I can look at any place else. And so I don't know how it's all gonna come down, but in my world, I was kind of depressing that I'm so addicted to Facebook, but it is a good information source. And I know that whatever's happening, you know, that's instant, and so I think that's a good thing that the city is involved in. So we'll see how the survey works out, but I was kind of embarrassed almost that I jumped on Facebook as fast as I did, but that's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments?
So for Kate, how much work do we have ahead of us? It seems like we heard a lot of positive things, which is good, and I know we share that, but just on can you give us a little bit of a teaser? I know you're still working on the final report, but is there a lot to do here, or
I
where
think
are we at?
it is still a little bit early. I think I've spent the whole day working with Andy on a couple different items that we want to get ironed out, especially his roles and responsibilities and what he wants to be focusing on, and identifying the tools and protocols, as Jeff mentioned, to help kind of streamline efforts. But we have a really good basis for what we're working with. Facebook is really effective. We're getting a lot of really good feedback. I think the survey will be really telling. We've already received over 100 responses, so that's really great. And we did a radio ad today, interview, so we'll be airing that on Thursday, hopefully to get another bump in the survey.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
And my usual question for electronic surveys, which I'm always the first one to fill it out online, but for those folks who aren't comfortable with social media or don't have an opportunity to hop online and fill that out, can they interact with city staff? How do they provide their feedback about what's the best way for them to get information?
Sure. We'd be happy to run through the survey with them, ask the questions, and then provide those answers and feed it in so we can gather the data about what would work best. Yeah.
So that message might not be a bad one to get out, kind of like, if you're not doing this, however, and you want to, we have a form, you can fill the form out. I mean.
Sure. It'd probably be a 5-minute conversation. People are more than welcome to call me and I can walk through it with them. Or Andy, I'm sure, would be willing to walk through it with them as well. It takes 5 minutes at most, and it would help us immeasurably to get as many responses as we can.
And there's that lovely kiosk at the front desk as well, which I appreciate that the survey link itself is on the homepage of our website, but for people who want someone to walk them through that, not everyone is going to go electronic first. So I appreciate you guys taking a look at that.
Okay.
Other questions? Councilmember?
And this may have been answered before, my apologies if you have, but when was the last time we've actually put together a communication strategy or updated the city's communication strategy?
I have not found any evidence that it was considered in a cohesive way.
Okay.
It's, as far as I can determine, been piecemeal up to that point, which is why this particular project is so important to us moving forward.
Yeah, awesome.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
This evening, we have no items on the business agenda. We are now recessing into executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. The executive session is planned to last 15 minutes. If extended time is needed, there will be an announcement. So we're recessing out of our regular meeting to executive session.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The first item on the action agenda tonight is Resolution 1148-0619, Payment of Claims. County Manager Terry Snitzer has details for us.
So, thank you, Mayor and council members. So a couple weeks ago, I brought the resolution forward. And so tonight, we're here to ask you to pass the resolution for us to be able to send our payments to our vendors before council approval. We will still bring the approvals to you at the meetings. It's just, nothing will change except for the timing of council approval. So we're just asking that you, asking for approval.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Any questions for Terry this evening? Okay, I will ask for the reading of Resolution 1148-0169.
Resolution number 1148-0619, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing release of checks and electronic payments prior to council approval.
Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt.
Go ahead.
Together.
Refer to the councilman,
Go ahead.
to my right.
Someone take it.
I move to adopt resolution number 1148-0619, payment of claims.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
No, I think,
Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 1148-0619, payment of claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Next, Community Development, Mark Ziegler Director Mark Ziegler has information about 120 West Nealon Street sale agreement.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Bringing to you tonight, a recommendation for approval of a purchase and sale agreement for 120 West Nealon. This property was declared surplus to the city's needs back in November of 2018. We've recently received 2 offers for the property, 2 full-price offers of $35,000, and tonight I'm recommending the council accept the offer from Erica and Michael Reifenau, if I pronounced that right.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept the purchase and sale agreement for the property at 120 West Nealon Street and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
Second.
Okay,
And just to clarify, probably you want to state which offer you're accepting in the motion.
The last name is Reifenau.
And amend my original motion, I move to accept the purchase and sale agreement of the, purchase and sale agreement to Reifenau for the property located at 120 West Nealon Street, and then authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
Second.
Thank you.
okay. We have an amended motion that's been seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to accept the purchase and sale agreement to Reifenau for the property located at 120 West Nealon Street and authorize me to sign on behalf of the city. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next, item number 3 is to City Manager Jeff Knighton about Resolution 1147-0619, the master fee schedule. Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Real quickly on the agenda, we did have a typo on the resolution number. In the paperwork, it is correct. In the staff report and on the resolution itself, I just wanted to note that so that there was no confusion moving forward. It's Resolution 1147-0619, as the mayor mentioned earlier. We did present this new master fee schedule update to the council a couple of weeks ago. We did hear a few concerns that I wanted to address real quickly. First, we did change the name of the previously submitted plans to stock plans so that everybody is familiar and comfortable with the same terminology. There won't be any mix-ups or confusions on that front, at least not related to what they're called. The other portion of one of the concerns that was mentioned was on variance applications and the fees associated with that. What the city intends to do when we update our development code, which will be coming up, at least starting to update our development code at the end of this year, along with several other items throughout the municipal code, as Director B. Miller mentioned earlier tonight, and a few other items we need to change. We are going to institute a administrative variance process, which would allow a change of 20% or less of a numerical standard. And the easiest way to present this is if you have a 10-foot setback requirement on your property, if you request a change to 8 feet or less, that would go through an administrative process, and it's a ministerial application. There's no public hearing that would be required to approve that. There are still notice provisions to neighbors and things like that, but the largest driver of these applications is the public hearing costs in front of the hearings examiner. These types of applications, 20% of less or of a numerical standard, would not require a public hearing unless our decision's appealed. So we will institute that process. It doesn't exist yet, but we will institute that. The fee will be substantially less, and we'll develop that as we look at how much time it takes for those applications to be approved. But it will be significantly less than the regular variance procedure that we have outlined today. The second item was subdivisions, the cost of subdivisions. One item that was mentioned that was a concern was a tiered system for subdivisions in order to encourage smaller developments. We already have a tiered system, somewhat of a tiered system with what we call a short plat, and that's basically a subdivision of a piece of property for one parcel into 2 to 4 lots, which would allow creation of 4 lots or less. Similar process, does not need to go to a hearing. It's approved internally, again, unless appealed. What we would propose to do under the development code rewrite that I mentioned a little bit earlier is to expand that from 2 to 4 lots to 2 to 9 lots. So that would provide that tiered system to encourage development. We would also, in conjunction with that, add a provision that would prohibit additional short plats on those same properties for 5 years. And that's necessary to prevent basically a workaround of the subdivision requirements. So you can still get those 9 lots or less, you just wouldn't be able to do it over and over and over again as a workaround to the public hearing process, which is wider notification. Lastly, we did make a change for the effective date from, assuming council adopts this tonight, this resolution tonight, from August 1 to September 1, and that's so that we internally have the ability to make sure that's communicated throughout the organization, to change our forms and make sure those are updated, both the paper forms and online, make sure the appropriate information is communicated to all interested parties. Other than that, there have been no other changes as part of the proposal, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jeff?
I'm glad that you changed it to stock plans because, you know, I kind of come from the 50s, you know, and that's what we used to call them. So thank you very much. I don't know if my comments spurred you into making that decision, but us good old boys out there, we know the term stock plans. So I think that'll work for the new generation.
And Jeff, would you mind speaking to pre-submission process? Because that was the other thing that came up during the hearing last time.
Sure. We do have a fee included in the fee schedule for pre-submittal conferences. They have remained at $150. We did not change that amount. The reason being is it's a relatively nominal fee for a conference where you have all departments involved in the process and commenting on a particular application. The reason that we have the fee in place is to make sure that city staff isn't in effect designing a project for individuals. Somebody just, to use the phrase, kicking the tires to come in and see what might possibly work. If people want to come in and have our department heads and some of our engineering staff and the fire chief and everybody sit and talk with them for an hour, we feel that $150 fee is wholly appropriate for that type of service.
Just hold.
Oh, go ahead.
Anything else? Okay, Councilmember Prime.
Well, I was just saying that I have paid that $150 or whatever before. I think it's cost doing business. I think it's a great idea. Usually I'm against paying a lot of extra money, but.
And for what it's worth, the folks that I discussed it with following our meeting and leading up to were less concerned with the price of the pre-submittal and the process. And so I really appreciate that Mark and his staff and you have been committed to creating predictability within that process and ensuring that people have clear expectations leaving that meeting on both sides so that hopefully we're making this an easy process.
Make it easy and keep it simple.
Sounds good. Okay, on this item, do we have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 1147-0619 as presented. Sorry.
Second.
Okay. And a second reading of resolution 1147-0619.
Resolution number 1147-0619, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, superseding resolution number 1139-1118, master fee schedule.
Thank you, Donna. We have a motion, a second, to approve resolution 1147-0619 as presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we're back to City Manager Knighton on resolution 1149-0719, the public safety sales and use tax.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and the public. The Board of Mason County Commissioners adopted Resolution 41-19 concerning a sales and use tax increase pursuant to the RCW, codified as mentioned in the staff report. The resolution authorizes placing the sales and use tax question on the August 6, 2019 ballot for voter approval. And if approved, the proposition would authorize Mason County to impose an additional sales and use tax of 0.3%, split between Mason County and the city of Shelton. In 2011, the then Shelton City Commission adopted a resolution to place a 0.1% proposition on the ballot, and that was approved by voters within the Shelton city limits November 8th, 2011, and was effective, I believe, April 1 of 2012. Tonight, I would ask the council to discuss the resolution, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to take one extra step. We had no one signed up for public comment. Has there been anybody wants to make public comment on this resolution, on this item? Okay, hearing, so we get a motion on the floor first, please. Okay. RCW 4217A.555 allows the city council to pass a resolution supporting or opposing a ballot measure, as long as we provide time for public comment and allow people in both support and opposed equal opportunity to speak. We have in front of us a resolution supporting the county public safety sales tax. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve resolution number 1149-0719 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now, discussion from the council. Councilmember Brown.
Just to be very clear on this, we are here not to be for or against this as a council. I mean, from this meeting, we are neutral, and we're walking out in the streets and talking to people. That's our personal opinion. Am I clear on how that works? Because we want to discuss this. So I just want to make sure our discussion, I mean, how that, I don't want people to make mistakes.
So under this process in the RCW that the mayor mentioned, this council, as long as public comment is offered and available in approximately equal time to both proponents and opponents of the ballot measure, this council can take a stance on whether to support a yes vote on August 6th.
Just to follow up,
Councilmember
please.
Brown.
So I can say what I feel about this, if I'm for it or against it at this meeting.
You can comment on the motion that's on the floor, which is this resolution supporting the county public safety tax.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Further discussion. Okay. I believe the statement will be acceptable. If not, I hope. I'll just make a statement, and then I'll let other people make statements if they choose to. First, I want to thank the county commissioners for bringing this forward to our voters for their decision. The future of public safety and our county jail is critical to our communities. Am I good so far, Kathleen?
You're good so far.
Okay. I am supporting this proposal, this resolution, because I believe our local governments must step up and provide additional law enforcement capabilities. Protecting the basic rights of our residents is a primary role of government at all levels. I wish our state government would do more, be more helpful, but it seems to be enacting policies that are detrimental to both individual and community safety. In this environment, local governments must meet the challenge with their own resources through allocating existing funding sources as well as looking at other revenue. I believe the city must take this opportunity to vote on this resolution and support our public safety capability, that will support our public safety capabilities, support Mason County and their needs, while continuing to keep our taxpayers in mind with a very limited use of general fund revenue which might become available. So with that, any other comments? Okay, hearing, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so with any tax-related initiative, it is a voter-decided thing, and I fully stand behind the process that goes with that. I also appreciate the work that staff has done to identify, because one of the key components of this is that the voting public understands where that money or where that tax increase potentially would be utilized within the city. And I think we've done a good job of articulating not just one particular need, but many needs related to criminal justice issues that exist within our city limits. The other caveat that I want to make sure is very clear is that we are experiencing issues with jail-related services and other things. Understand that this tax doesn't necessarily build a new jail and solve all of these problems, okay? And again, it's the work that staff has done to articulate the other needs that get around this in a more holistic approach to improve the situation and hopefully get us down the road in the city. And that's definitely critical to a longer-term strategy here, so.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. I'll ask for, I guess it's
Call for the
second
vote.
reading? First and final reading.
First.
Yeah.
First.
I'll ask for first and final reading of Resolution 1149-0719.
Resolution number 1149-0719, supporting Mason County proposition local sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 1149-0719 as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, second general public comment period. Anyone signed up?
No.
Donna, thank
No
you.
one.
Okay, so we're ending with administrative reports from City Manager Knighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to do the communications piece tonight for my administration report. I didn't have anything else prepared, but see the meeting's about over at 7:15. I think that's great.
Can I ask you to give a plug for the cleanup days? Because I know you mentioned it
Oh,
wasn't
Absolutely.
super well attended this last weekend.
It was not, and the cleanup days, we are running those from this last weekend through the end of August to coincide with the opening of the school year, make sure that that's all complete. We will be holding the event for Zone 2 coming up next weekend, Friday and Saturday, and that'll be, the collection site is Oakland Bay Junior High School. It starts at 9 a.m. on both days, ends at 3 on Friday and 1 on Saturday, and I encourage people to come out and take advantage of that service. We did, and I do want to mention this now, I know we'll be going out to social media and everything to make sure everybody was aware. In our first printing of the vouchers, we had the second set of dates, starting, I believe, the second weekend in August for zones 5 through 8, or 5 through 8, had the Oakland Bay Junior High School address on them. And that was a mistake. We did get the updated vouchers back today, and we'll be sending out a second set and making sure that people know where the collection site is. That those dates, zones 5 through 8, will be held at Bordeaux Elementary School. So we'll make sure we advertise that heavily.
And for those who are unfamiliar with this project, how do I know what zone I'm in? Where do I get my voucher?
Sure. I'm trying to remember the website off the top of my head. Shelton government page, it's the 2019 cleanup is where you'd be able to see the map and what zone you're in. If you have any question, if it's difficult to see on the map and you need to, or you're right on the border of one of the zones, give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out and tell you which zone you're in. They're all color-coded for which zone and where to go and how to get there. And the types of garbage and trash that we'll accept is also on that cleanup page. Again, City of Shelton's homepage, and then Cleanup 2019 should be featured relatively prominently.
And the vouchers are mailed directly to our residents?
That's correct.
Through their utility billing?
Mm-hmm. Not through their utility billing, it's a separate mailing.
And this information has been through Facebook also?
Facebook, I have been interviewed on our local radio station about the project. We've tried to get the word out in our newsletter the Shelton Stream that we put out quarterly, and that one's in our utility bills. And then we've tried to get the word out as many ways as we can, and hopefully more people will take advantage of the service. I do know also that there will be a day to accept appliances and tires. I believe that's first part of September. I'm working to get the date, but in future cleanup events, we'll have a flyer that'll tell people when those types of items will be collected. Our city's project is unfortunately not able to take large appliances or furniture or tires in particular.
And if I may, just one more, speak to the financial impact that this has, because we've had some really great partnership from Mason County Garbage and Recycling on this, if you would care to mention that?
Yeah, three actually, particularly important partners to this project are the Shelton School District for allowing us to use their facilities to do these cleanup days, so we really appreciate that. Mason County Garbage has donated quite a bit to this project and to help us complete it, as well as Mason County's transfer site that has very busy days on the weekends, just typically. And we're adding to that. One of the reasons why we wanted to spread this out a little bit over 8 weekends is to reduce the volume for our folks that are working on it, Mason County Garbage folks that are working on it, and the transfer site station, who are out there working hard in the humidity and the heat that we're experiencing at the moment.
Councilmember Schmidt.
So I took advantage of this opportunity and went by, it was my zone this weekend, and I think I was the 12th person in the middle of the day on Saturday.
Yeah.
I really hope people take advantage of this. We hear it frequently about trash piling up and, you know, cleanup issues in the city, and this is an opportunity that we're putting forward to everyone, and man, I really wish people would take advantage of it and do a little cleaning up around town. So yeah, and thanks for orchestrating it all. I know it's not the most fun thing to do on a Saturday for staff, but yeah, hopefully we get a better turnout in the coming weekends. So
Yeah, I do hope it's more widely used and taken advantage of. You know, doing everything we can to improve people's lives just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I sure appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I ditto your remarks. Take advantage. Our time has not come yet, but we're going to take advantage of it, so please do.
Yeah.
So, okay, any other business tonight from the council? Okay, hearing none. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 6th, 2019 at 6 p.m. We're adjourned.